Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. This is Kevin Anderson, your host, and my co host, as always, Adam Okada, joining us. And for this episode, Cheron Rojo, our very own uh, leader on the clinical affairs team here at Healthmark, is joining us again following a webinar that he just finished up. So hopefully you caught that. If you didn't, please circle back to the Healthmark Academy and check out the full webinar because it's going to be much more detailed than we can get here in the podcast. But just to whet your appetite for it, Sharon, why don't you introduce us to the study, what it was about, where the data come from, all that good stuff, so we can kind of set the stage.
Yeah, so hey, thanks for having me on again. It's always great to be on talking with you guys. But yeah, this was about two studies, and what's interesting is that these two studies that were published in Process Magazine, 2024 and 2025, two different complete studies. When I was collecting this data to do a this webinar, as well as a CE program for our sales team to offer to our customers, there was some data in there that I couldn't find. And I'm like, gosh, I can't find this last part of the data, which was the data that I collected for light cables. And I kept searching, and to realize that I had the data, but I never extracted it and I never had it published. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get this somewhere because it's really good data. And that's kind of what happened. That's kind of a nutshell of what I just talked about in the webinar. But really, it was just found it, and now I want to do something about it. And right now, it's a preliminary study, and then get it into a peer-reviewed study for the light cable.
Yeah, that's going to be great. And you started the webinar talking about your shaver inspection study. Can you talk a little bit about some of the results that you had from that study?
Of course. So with the shaver study, which I know there's another one, I know Kevin's working on one.
Yep.
I can't wait to hear his. But mine, I know his is probably worse than mine, but it was a 92% failure rate, and that was 26 shavers, 24 out of the 26. And you're looking at a year study, 10 states, 28 hospitals, 92%. That's huge. And that was just the inside. When I looked at the outside, it was a 77% fail rate. And that was 13 shavers, 10 identified some type of integrity issue that was obvious. That was over seven, almost 80%.
Yeah.
Huge.
It is
Crazy.
staggering, and yeah, you're gonna see. Hopefully, my you alluded to my study. Yeah, hopefully that will be published this year, and the results are just as staggering. It's kind of frightening, to be honest, to see how many of these shavers are failing on the inside and the outside um, upon inspection.
Right.
And with staggering results like that, um, there's got to be some contributing factors. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to share what you think or what you seem to find when you go into these different departments. You mentioned all over the country, really, in different states. What have you find as the common contributing factors for these things?
There's a couple. So the big one in regards to debris, either inside or outside the shaver, was just not having the correct brushes. And even in the poll that
Mm,
Adam did, it was like, wow, a lot of people, I forgot the percentage, but a lot of them are saying they were using one to two brushes, and it was just a
yeah.
small group that said five or more. Small. So matched to what we're actually seeing. So having the correct
Yeah.
brush and the amount of brushes, and then the other one is having the correct magnification. They're depending so much if they, do use the desktop magnifiers, because a lot of times they don't even use them. They're just pushed to the side collecting dust. They're just using their own naked eye.
Right.
Um, and the other data I forgot to mention, which also has a contributing factor, is also the shaver pressure leakage test. That is like a
Yeah.
dry leak test that you perform on the shaver to make sure it's holding its pressure, to make sure that there's no seal integrity issues that are protecting those electrical components, which in the OR would end up being a stalling or overheating or both of the shaver. That was a 23% fail rate. So even though it was 22 shavers and only five shavers tested, you know, failed, it was still over 20% of patient-ready shavers that I
Yeah.
already know those five would have done what I just said, overheated or whatever. So in that case, contributing factors with is there's just nothing really for them to test with, or they don't know that this test is actually out there.
Yeah. I think
Yeah, I think that's. Go ahead, Kevin.
yeah, sorry, I went out of turn, but I was just going to say, I think you just alluded to another contributing factor, which is lack of education, lack of
Hmm.
awareness. It's funny because we kind of talk about this stuff a lot because we see it out in the field and we know to look for it. But I think the vast majority of frontline technicians getting that information down, disseminated down to them, it's not happening to the rate that what we would like to believe. And
Right.
I think there's a lot of awareness issues around these problems. But go ahead, Adam. I cut you off.
No, no, I was going to say the exact same thing. I mean, I think that talking to people in the field, it's a lot of they weren't even aware that the leak test could be a thing. That there are seals inside those shavers where if
Yeah.
it's compromised, now you have fluid invasion and now you've got issues. So a lot of that is just getting the word out about that kind of stuff. But one thing that you had in this study or in this webinar you just did was you were talking about rigid scopes. And I always thought that this was a major issue that we had. We would just sort of hold them up to the light and we would hope that we would see enough through them that we could tell whether or not they were working. And
You
in the
forgot
webinar I think it
praying.
showed that. Right,
And
exactly,
you got to
just
pray.
crossing fingers, crossing toes, everything, but just hoping it would be okay.
Yeah.
So you included some data about that. So what did you find on rigid endoscopes and what you were looking
So
at?
with that published study, that was probably in springtime in 2024. So this study was a 1 year study, 5 states, 29 facilities, and I took this was a little bit more. This was 41 rigid endoscopes, patient ready. So for the external piece of it, the outside of it, 26 actually demonstrated some type of integrity failure. It was over 63% failure rate. That's over 50%.
Ugh.
And it was obvious. And then took the same 41 scopes, but five exhibited some type of integrity failure within the internal optics using a functionality test called an endoprocam that looked at all of it from the glass prisms, the glass spacers, the fiber optic light cables within it, and that was over 12%. So that was over 10% of patient-ready scopes had that issue. And I'm talking like blurred areas in it, from even darkened images or things that we just don't even know what it is. And it was something wrong with the lens coming off or free floating in within the rigid endoscope. So yeah,
Well,
it's pretty
I'll tell
significant.
you what, going back to my OR days, I would have loved to know that my SPD was checking these things because when something goes wrong with the image and the OR, it's like most likely one of three different things. It's either the rigid endoscope, the camera, or the light cable. And the things that we have, the tools that we have that are available, the easiest things to inspect for us right now are the light cables and the rigid endoscopes. The cameras are a little bit harder. I guess you could plug them into a tower if you happen to have a tower.
Right.
An embarrassment of riches, I guess. But that being said, you've also touched on the light cables. So you just talked about the rigid endoscopes, but light cables were also a focus of your study, right? So what was the data around light cables?
So this is a preliminary study for the light cable. So this is the one that I knew I did something with it, but I just never extracted the data. So with this one, get this. This is a 2 year study. So all my studies, even with insulation, other ones that I've done have always been about a year. This was bigger. So it was 2 year study, 23 to 25. 21 facilities across 8 different states. So even though the sample size was only 21 light cables, think about how many hospital systems, all the different hospitals, all the different states. So 21 light cables, 16 identified integrity failures at a 76% fail rate.
Mm.
That was ugly. That's almost 80% right there. And I determined this based on a 20% fail rate or higher of broken light fibers within that cable. So I know that in the webinar I said, look, people are probably wondering where did I get the 20%? Well, it's not in the IFUs. All the ones that I looked at, even Jahan Azizi, who we know very well, he even helped me. Like I said, John, I can't find anything. Help me. Nothing. And obviously the recommendations, the standards don't state anything. But what's interesting is the telescope and the rigid endoscopes actually stated up to 35% of the broken light fibers within the rigid scope. But that's the IFU for that, but not for
Mm,
the cable. So a hospital can say, you know what, I want 10% or higher, then I consider that bad, or 5%. I just chose 20% because 20% of your light gone, that's a huge issue.
right.
Yeah, and it's really overlooked. It's really totally forgotten about. Like we do check our scopes and sterile processing. We make sure to inspect them. Whether or not we have a tool that can actually look through the scope and whether or not it's a good visual, we often don't have that tool. The Endo Program, you mentioned that during the webinar, is a really good tool to be able to see through the rigid endoscope. But for light cords and cables, like we never had anything to check those. It was just look at it on the outside. If it doesn't look broken or dirty, then you would just put it in the tray. And Kevin, to your point, in the OR, a lot of those things would end up getting caught at point of use that, oh, this cord is bad. Now we have to throw it away. And then I think,
Mm,
Cheron, you mentioned in the webinar also that there's a certain amount of lives that some of these cords have that, are only good for 20 sterilization cycles or 50 sterilization cycles. But it's not always something that people are tracking. They just keep reprocessing them over and over and over again.
And that was something new for me. When I looked at the IFUs and I saw that, I'm like, oh my God. It was actually for this one I saw was 100 uses. And I thought, I didn't
Mm.
even know they had some type of expiration. I just thought they're good for life, right?
yep.
And that's
Oh,
probably
yeah.
why I'm seeing all this damage and that why that percentage is high because people are probably thinking the same way I'm thinking. I never knew that,
Mm.
and even in the FDA mud report in specific to light cables, I mean, there were some pretty significant like adverse events to patients, from
Mm,
catching the drape on fire from this is the cable, okay? Catching the drape on fire and then resulting in this one said resulting in a 5 millimeter diameter burn to the patient's left chest. So even using your hand and playing with the proximal and distal end of that cable to make sure it's not loose, because in this case that's what happened. Um, it's
mm.
crazy. And it was a lot in
Yeah.
there.
I can totally see how that would happen, when going back to that same scenario because it happened all the time in the OR where you're like trying to troubleshoot what the issue is. And so you don't identify there's a problem until everything is hooked up. Your camera's on, your light source is on. But when your light source is on and you notice there's a problem, you can't see, the picture quality is not great. What they immediately start doing is the troubleshooting process. So they take the light cable off. And if they set it on the patient or the drape or whatever, and it gets hot while you're trying to get a new thing hooked up and do the troubleshooting process, that absolutely can happen where you burn through the drape or you burn the patient underneath. And it's not a good practice, but that's like what happens sometimes in the real world when these things go wrong and they're just trying to quickly get back up and running again. It's an ugly thing that just a little bit of preventative steps being involved in the assembly area through your inspection process could prevent a lot of these potential issues. Did you find anything else, whether in the IFUs or in the mod database that our listeners should be aware of?
The fact that there were a lot of adverse events to patients, I thought I would find more near misses and like,
Yeah.
oh, malfunction, malfunction, malfunction. No, that surprised me that there were that many adverse events to patients every which way, from the shavers to rigid scopes to light cables.
Mm.
Yeah, that was the big surprise.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And the webinar is really good. So go to Healthmark Academy, check out the March 2026 webinar that Cheron just did. But Cheron, any final thoughts? Anything that you want to leave listeners with that they can maybe take back to their departments?
Yes, the biggest one and the main one was, Kevin, I think you brought up the fact that, a lot of this information doesn't disseminate all the way down to the frontline teams that really need this information. Well, I can tell you that Healthmark launched a new CE program, and it was based on this webinar. So everything you saw, if you were able to see the webinar, that is what can be provided now from our sales team to the frontline teams and actually bring some of those tools to do a more hands-on experience. So that would be my final message, that I think that can maybe help and push and drive, for our professionals to actually have the right tools to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect place to end. Please reach out to your Healthmark territory manager. Get one of these educational programs scheduled in your department so it can get down to the frontline techs doing the work every day, and empower them to get these quality inspections done before it ends up being another FDA mod database report.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much, Cheron, for sharing your study findings and giving us a little taste of what's on the larger webinar. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.